And I'd like you to give it up for Mr. Matthew Griffin. Hop on stage. I like that. Hey, brother. Here you go.
I'm going to grab the clicker here real quick. You can't be a PowerPoint ranger without your PowerPoint clicker. Thank you, Chris, for having me down tonight. This is a spectacular event. I do a lot of these talks, and by far, this is the most professional event I've seen. Tons of style. Well done. I'm excited to be in the room today. I know there's a lot of transitioning vets out here or active duty service members, and you have the rest of your life to live. So, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? I'm going to share with you my story. I'm going to probably put a challenging question or two in front of you, and I hope you challenge yourself with those questions, for the rest of your life, because there's a lot of time between your end in service and when you go on. So I'm pretty convinced that if I took a handful of people out of here, there'd be enough talent that we could take over a small country in this room. It is completely and totally possible. It's been done before, and I think that there's a few people in here that could probably do it and believe that it's true. So I remember after I got out of the military, I saw this sign that said, if every soldier in the world put down their rifle and picked up a shovel, we could end world hunger. It is completely and totally true. We have done a lot more work for a lot stupider things in our military career. I think a lot of you could agree with that. The hurry up and wait to do meaningless tasks over and over again for years until you actually get a time to do something meaningful. If you were to spend all that time solving a problem, we would solve a lot of problems for either our country or humanity. And it really challenged me to think, what are we going to do with our veteran skills, our leadership skills, our ability to drive forward and to help others? We're servant leaders. We join to serve others. We join to help. We join to solve problems. I don't know if you guys grew up in the 80s like I did, but be all that you can be. Get an inch on life in the Army. I always like the Navy commercials better, though. They actually ran better commercials. So my career started in the Rangers. I graduated from West Point in 2001. I was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I'm an artillery guy, if there's any red legs in here. And I remember my fire support instructor walking into the back of the class, shutting the door, telling everybody to shut up, and he flipped on the TV. And it was just in time to watch the second plane run into the tower. We were going to war. It was a reality. This was going to happen. And I was very fortunate that in my cadet career and early military career, I was exposed to a bunch of Rangers. I really liked them. I thought they were cool. In my officer basic course, our senior fire support officer came from the regiment. He was also very cool, and I knew that if I was going to go into the military and if I was going to go to war, I wanted to go with the Rangers. Through officer basic course, hey, I'm going to go get my war on. I'm going to go and get those terrorists, go get those Al-Qaeda and Taliban guys. Through Ranger School, through my first conventional unit, and the first day that I could drop my packet to the Rangers, I dropped it, went through rope, got admitted to 2nd Ranger Battalion, and it was right after they had just gotten back from the invasion in Iraq, so all of the privates were running around with scrolls and stereo, poking fun at the cherry lieutenant with no combat patch, so I'm sure there's a few people in the room here that understand that joke. A few months after getting there, we got the order that we were going to do something pretty crazy. So it's called Operation Winter Strike, and it was the second time in history that all 3 battalions were surged into the same area. Who here served in Afghanistan? You guys familiar with fighting season? All right, so for those not familiar with fighting season, what happens is the Taliban likes to fight when it's warm and comfortable. As soon as it gets into the fall and winter, they retreat to these high-altitude mountain villages or across borders, rest out, hang out with mama all winter, get fat and happy, and then come out back in the spring for fighting season. So this is our second year in Afghanistan, and people are beginning to find out that, hey, they're going and hiding in the mountains. So we're going to take 3 battalions from sea level. We're going to deploy them into the mountains, and over a week, we're going to send them to 10,000-foot villages, and we're going to go hunt these guys down in the middle of winter. Yeah. So we drove the trucks out of Bagram all the way to Asadabad, drove them up to Nangalam, And then we got in the helicopters, and then we flew as far as they would take us, and then we lived in those valleys and villages for months. Real ranger operations, living in homes, living in schools, developing intelligence, running missions, running patrols, collecting weapons, finding fighters, the 47 resupplies, dropping in chutes. It was real ranger life. It was what I had signed up to do. And in addition to finding, fighters, we found an enemy that was much more profound, and I'm sure there's some people in the room here that understand what it is, but it's poverty. Absolute poverty. It's the kind of poverty that when somebody says the word poverty, it pops into your head. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I'm sure there's a number of people in this room here that know what I'm talking about. That it provides you a sense of scale in your everyday life of how good we really have it here. Lack of access to employment, school, healthcare, water, all of the things combined together. And then you add the fact that at this point in time, they had been roughly 23 years of solid conflict. And on top of that, stacked in the middle of a narco-financed insurgency. The poverty is so deep. And in spite of that, they were really cool to us. They helped us out. They fed us. We bought chickens and sheep and food and milk and everything they could. They worked with us to survive. A Ranger platoon, we ate an entire village out of their winter supply, and they gave it to us willingly. So there was these, one morning, I was a fire support officer, so I had to get up every morning and download the aircraft tasking order to understand the aircraft that were on station for the day for the missions. So again, a lot of hurry up and wait in the military. And so there's my SAT antenna, bottom left, and I am just waiting for the call to come in, and this is just the sun's coming up, and I watch these 3 little girls pour out of the hut below us on the side of the mountain, and they were absolutely perfect. They were unpolluted by any consumerism, media, whatever it is. They were just 3 perfect little children. And they had a stick, and they were playing together. They were in this beautiful mountain valley in Afghanistan, and after a few minutes, their mother came out, and she just played with them too. And then after a few minutes, they sat down and they prayed together, and then they went inside and they had breakfast. And it was a very empathetic moment for me, because at this time we'd been in these villages and valleys for 3 weeks or so. And I was experiencing something different than I was told in the media, right? The country isn't full of people that absolutely hate Americans. They were excited to see our flags on our shoulders, the prosperity that we were going to bring, the change that we were going to make to help them get rid of the oppression of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and the drug runners. And it was inspiring to be there, and we felt good about being there. But the poverty, how were we as Army Rangers, as a military, going to end this poverty? And I could not answer that question after 3 more deployments to Afghanistan and 1 to Iraq. In 2006, I got out of the military. 2009, I was working for a company called Remote Medical International, and they invited me back to Afghanistan to work with the Afghan National Army and to work with contractors that were supporting the operations overseas. And so I went to this conference, and I'm a weird-looking guy, long hair, a beard, and I'm sure you guys all know excuse me if anybody's wearing this here in the room, but the 511 pants and the 511 polo with the high and tight. So nobody is talking to me. And I'm looking across the room. It's about this size, and there on the other side of the room is another guy, long hair and a beard looking, and nobody's talking to him. And I was like, oh, weird knows weird. So I go over and I talk to him, and he is an amazing Marine. I have such a warm spot in my heart for Marines. My Ranger buddy was a Marine, and this guy is a sick Marine, and he was kicking ass in life. And he was hired by an Afghan family to build a combat boot and uniform factory in Kabul, Afghanistan. And this dude flew all over the world, found machines, equipment, trainers. And in the process of buying all this stuff to build a factory, he said, man, I got the best espresso machine in Kabul. You should come over for a cup of coffee. So I've been in Afghanistan for like 2 weeks. I'm tired of tea, and I wanted to get a good cup of coffee. So I took him up, and I went to this factory, and I found 300 people working. They were living the American dream. They were working in a job. They were living a dutiful life. They were living with purpose. They were enduring the threat to go work in this factory to defend their country, to defend the prosperity that we as U.S. service members had provided them. I lost 6 friends there. Like, I never really had any closure. And when I walked in, this site provided it. We were providing opportunity in the country that we had fought so hard to liberate. So John took that pile of rubble from 2007 into 2010, and he turned it into a beautiful factory. It was unbelievable to see the transformation that he was able to provide the Afghans. There's stories of them taking illiterate people off the street, teaching them how to read, how to run equipment, clothing them, feeding them, housing them, and getting them into a better life. Stories of cobblers in Afghanistan not having a job and having to go to Pakistan or India to work. Then now that this factory opened, they could come back to Afghanistan and be rejoined with their family. This is literally creating community. And nothing ever happened to this factory. Not a bombing, not a mugging, not a shooting, nothing. Business is what drives security. When I went back to these countries, I was dressed just like this. I wasn't wearing body armor. I didn't have 100 of my friends with guns that were trigger happy. I had to be nice, and I had to have cash, and I had to walk around. And everywhere I went, whether it was Afghanistan, Sudan, DRC, Iraq, I would ask, where's the area with small business? Where are the business owners? Where are the restaurants? Where are all of these places? Because business owners watch their own street corner. Anything that's bad for business is bad for their family, so they don't let it happen. So everywhere I go, I try to find the area that's flourishing with small business. And as I'm sitting in these places, I'm always asking myself, why as a country aren't we doing more of this? Why do we continue to send MRAPs and B-1 bombers and all of these other things instead of business leaders, microloans, entrepreneurs to help stand up local leaders who can run their own communities and watch their own street corners and expand that security through business? So I'm standing in this factory, and I'm super inspired about what John had done, what he'd built. The conversation goes to, well, what's going to happen when the war ends? And he looks at me without skipping a beat. He says, oh, yeah, man, we're just going to shut it down. All these people are going to go out of work. Nobody's going to want to buy anything in Afghanistan. So I went from absolute inspiration and closure to fury. I was so mad. Like, how are we going to make the same mistakes over and over again? Wage a protracted war, do a rapid withdrawal, create a power vacuum, allow the rise of a radical group who typically doesn't like America, and then we'll have to send our children to go back and fight the same war that we didn't finish off right the first time. Like, how are we going to keep doing this over and over again, wasting so many lives and injuring so many people and so much of our national potential? I'm just so mad thinking about all these other things, and they're like then on my left. And there on this table it was brown, and it was tan, it was rubber, and it was leather, and it was ugly, and it was cool. And it was a combat boot sole with a flip-flop thong punched through it. And I looked at it and I go, man, Americans would buy that shit. And like the whole word of like combat and flip-flops, the juxtaposition of the two, swords to plowshares, Americans supporting Afghans with commercial enterprise through an opportunity that we provided them with war. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. We did it in Europe with the Marshall Plan, but we're going to do it in Afghanistan right now with flip-flops, right? So that was the idea. So we created a company. It's called Combat Flip-Flops. So I called the only people crazy enough to do something as stupid like this with you again, or the ones who have done it with you before, right? So I called my Ranger buddy, Donald Lee, and I said, hey, man, we're going to make flip-flops in Afghanistan. And like any good Ranger buddy, he says, all right, let's do it. So we created a mission-based company. It's called Combat Flip-Flops. And I'm sure people in here know mission statements and medal statements, but it really provides a direction for anybody who works for you, absent any guidance or supervision. And our message and our mission is this, is we create peaceful, forward-thinking opportunities for self-determined entrepreneurs affected by conflict. Our willingness to take bold risks, community connection, and distinct designs communicates business, not bullets, flipping the view on how wars are won. Through persistence, creativity, and respect, we will empower the mindful consumer to manufacture peace through trade. It's our mission statement. And we also make a whole bunch of flip-flops. So that's the AK-47. That was the first product we ever made. It is tough to unseat from the top, but it's combat boot rubber, AK-47 casings, and poppies all over it, and it's just a cool beach cruiser. It's a fun product, and we were first-time business owners, fresh out of the Army, no money, trying to start a flip-flop company in Afghanistan. So, hey, we're trying to raise money, and this is just as they had legalized dope in Washington. So, there was no money available, right? Especially for guys starting a flip-flop company in Afghanistan. So we did what every other entrepreneur does, is you tighten your waist belt, you eat less, you sell all your guns, you sell your hot rod, you sell your boat. I know the guns one gets most guys here. But we did it all, and we came up with 200 pairs of flip-flops in a sample bag, and we did what most young entrepreneurs do, is we go down to SHOT Show and outdoor retailer with a backpack full of stuff, and we just hunted down all the bloggers, and next thing you know, people learned about our mission statement, they read about it, and they said, you know what, we've been to Afghanistan. It's this community who did it, the military community, and they said, we agree with what you're doing. We've seen it. We know what you're trying to do. We're going to buy some. And they did, and they bought 4,000 pair in 72 hours. We'd never made a pair in production. Not one. Oh, business is easy, right? Yeah, there's a bunch of pitfalls and everything else here and there. But the real reason why we're doing it is we really want to end the war there. We think that as a nation, we have the skills, ability, and prosperity in order to provide it to others, so that way they can secure their own nation. And the way that we're going to do it is through women. You have to educate them. You have to educate all of them. So if you try to explain to a standard American or any conservative American or any liberal American, whoever, saying, oh, we need to provide jobs in Afghanistan, people look at you sideways. Right? It's really tough for the people who haven't seen it to consume, and it really doesn't solve the problem that we need it to solve. Is we need to cut off the recruitment base for radicals, and we need to create better leaders for their country, and it all starts with women. You cannot expect to raise a country out of poverty if 50% of it is oppressed, especially when that 50% is raising all. It is impossible to do. We need to educate their women. So we said for every product that we sell, we're going to put a girl in school for a day. And so for the people who don't understand how education works in Afghanistan, is a girl is married at the age of 12 to 13. Between 1980 to 2002, they weren't actually allowed to go to school. Since we've been there, they're allowed to be educated until they're married. So by the time they're married, they might have the equivalent of a first or second grade education. And then they get married to a man 10 to 20 years older than them. Lifespan for a guy in Afghanistan is pretty short. Now they're in their early 20s, couple kids, no education, husband's gone, and now they need to support their family. So the kids get put out on the street to work. That's where radicals pick them up. That's where they're convinced and trained to strap bombs to themselves and go hurt other people. If we want to stop that, if we want to stop that process from happening, we have to educate the women. Educated mothers will not allow their children to be radicalized. This is what we have to do. So we told that to people, specifically people in this community, and they started doing things like this. I think it's called virility. They started wearing our product and doing dumb stuff and posting it on social media, which drove more people to our company, to our mission, and they read about it. And although there was a bunch of people that said we were going to fail along the whole way, and to be honest, we failed so much along the way. We were that close all the time, like today. But eventually, enough people said it where this happened. I got a call on a Tuesday night, said, hey, we want you to be on Shark Tank. We read about your mission. We trained for it just like we trained for every other thing that we did in the Rangers. We've been in that room hundreds of times before we ever stepped into the tank. First 3 shark deal in seasons, Mark Cuban, Damon John, Lori Grenier. And through that effort, through that training, through that discipline that we all know in this community, we were able to go articulate our message and our mission and inspire hundreds of thousands of people to support us. It has been insane. It was a rocket ship. And through that, we've educated over 500 girls in Afghanistan. All right, so I think we're supposed to provide some lessons, something for you guys to walk away with. It's tough, man. Life is tough when you get out of the military. You have to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And if we go back to, if every person put down their rifle and picked up a shovel, what problem could we solve? But what problem are you going to solve with the rest of your life? So that's my daughter, born September 11th, 2004. She was born on my third deployment to Afghanistan. I listened to her be born through an iridium. And she is 14 years old now. She is that close to going to war. It is unacceptable that this happened on our watch. We need to change this. It's up to this community to do it. We need to change our country from the inside out. It's done with good community leaders, good business leaders, making good decisions for our country. We have to do this. We have to just do three things. We just have to work really hard. We have to be really creative on how we're going to solve problems, because that's what you need to do today. And if you can't do either one of those, just help somebody else. I wish every one of you the best of luck. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you, everybody.
One more time, Matthew Griffin.